She was mocked by bank employees, publicly humiliated, all because she asked to withdraw $500 in cash. They looked at her simple clothes, her quiet demeanor, and assumed she was poor. But they were wrong, because her billionaire husband walked in. The marble lobby of Regent Crest Bank gleamed under crystal chandeliers, a cathedral of wealth in the heart of Manhattan. The air smelled of polished leather and expensive cologne, and the clients, men in tailored suits, women in designer heels, moved with the confidence of those who owned the world. This wasn't just a bank, it was a fortress for the elite, where accounts started at 7 figures, and the staff prided themselves on spotting outsiders a mile away. On that crisp October morning, Isabel Moore walked through the revolving glass doors, her slightly wrinkled white blouse tucked into faded jeans, her scuffed loafers silent on the polished floor. At 38, she was striking in her simplicity, warm brown eyes, dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail, and a quiet grace that seemed out of place amid the opulence. In her hand was a plain canvas tote, holding nothing but a wallet and a folded withdrawal slip. The security guard, a burly man named Vince, with a buzz cut and a smirk, clocked her the second she stepped inside. His eyes raked over her outfit, lingering on the absence of jewelry or a designer bag. "Excuse me, you here to deliver water or clean the lobby?" he said, loud enough for the clients nearby to turn. A woman in a fur-trimmed coat snickered, her diamond earrings catching the light. Isabel's lips curved into a faint, patient smile. "I'm a client," she said, her voice soft but clear, like a breeze cutting through smog. She moved toward the teller line, ignoring the whispers that followed. The teller, Marissa, a sharp-featured woman in a crisp blazer, stood behind a mahogany counter, her manicured nails tapping impatiently. She glanced at Isabel, her eyes narrowing as if sizing up an intruder. "Ma'am, the ATM is outside," she said, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. "This area is for actual account holders." A man in a pinstripe suit waiting behind Isabel chuckled, muttering, "Probably lost her way from the subway." Isabel didn't flinch. She slid her withdrawal slip across the counter. "I'd like to withdraw $500 in cash, please," she said, her voice steady. Marissa's laugh was sharp, like glass breaking. $500? We don't handle spare change at this window. For that, you should use the ATM, if you know how." She leaned forward, her voice lowering to a mocking whisper. "Honestly, I thought you were applying for a janitor position." The clients in line laughed, their voices echoing off the marble walls. A young woman in a red dress, her phone already out, snapped a photo, captioning it, "When you walk into Regent Crest looking like this." Isabel's fingers tightened briefly on her tote, the only sign of tension in her composed posture. "The ATM outside is broken," she said calmly. "I've had an account here for 3 years. Please process my request." Marissa's smirk widened. She tapped her screen, then made a show of squinting at it. 3 years, huh? I don't see anything under Isabel Moore. You sure you're not at the wrong bank? This is Regent Crest, not some community credit union." The laughter grew louder, a chorus of scorn. A man in a cashmere coat called out, "Send her to the pawn shop!" The young woman's photo hit Instagram, racking up likes as comments poured in. "Total scam artist!" "Kick her out!" Isabel stood serene, her brown eyes meeting Marissa's without a flicker of anger. "Check again," she said softly. "It's there." Before Marissa could respond, a floor manager named Bradley strode over, his polished shoes clicking with authority. He was mid-40s, with slicked back hair and a tie pin that screamed old money. One glance at Isabel, her jeans, her loafers, her lack of status, and his lips curled. "This is a VIP facility," he said, his voice loud enough to draw every eye in the lobby. "If you're not part of that class, I'll have to ask you not to disturb the experience for our premium clients." He gestured to Vince and another guard, who flanked Isabel like bouncers at a club. The crowd leaned in, phones flashing, framing her as a spectacle. "She's wasting our time," the woman in the fur coat muttered, sipping her complimentary espresso, probably fishing for a handout. Marissa grabbed a microphone from the teller station, her voice booming through the lobby's speakers as she pointed at Isabel, now flanked by the guards. "Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a moment for this?" she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Isabel Moore thinking she can stroll into Regent Crest with pocket change and demand our time." The crowd roared with laughter, clients clutching their briefcases and pearls. "She says she's got an account here, but look at her. Jeans, wrinkled shirt, shoes from a dumpster." Marissa's eyes glinted as she gestured to the massive digital screen above the counters, which flickered to life with a mock transaction. Isabel Moore, balance $500. The lobby erupted, clients howling as a woman in a Chanel suit shouted, "She's a fraud!" Someone tossed a paper coffee cup, grazing Isabel's shoulder, and Marissa clapped, her smile venomous. "Let's give her a round of applause for trying," she crowed as the young woman's live stream zoomed in, comments surging. "Savage! Humiliate her!" Isabel's grip on her tote tightened, her face serene, but the public shaming burned like acid. Isabel's posture didn't waver. She looked at Bradley, her voice still polite, still measured. "I'm a client, and I'm entitled to withdraw my money. If you won't process $500, I'd like to speak to the branch director." Bradley laughed, a cold, dismissive sound. "The director doesn't meet with walk-ins," he said, nodding to the guards. "Escort her out, quietly." Vince grabbed her elbow, his grip firm but professional. "Let's go, ma'am," he said, steering her toward the doors. The crowd's whispers turned to jeers. "What a joke," the man in the cashmere coat said, loud enough for Isabel to hear. "Bet she's got $5 in her account, Max." As Isabel was steered toward the doors, a group of clients closed in, their designer outfits a glittering wall of scorn. The man in the cashmere coat, his Rolex flashing, stepped forward, his voice loud and mocking. "Hey, sweetheart, you think $500 buys you a seat at this table? This bank's for winners, not charity cases." His wife, in an emerald green dress, flicked her manicured nails at Isabel's tote. "What's in there, food stamps? Bet she's here to beg." A tech bro in a velvet blazer, his phone filming, chimed in, "Yo, this is going viral. Broke girl tries to bank with the big dogs." The crowd laughed, their voices a vicious chorus, as a woman in stilettos accidentally bumped Isabel, knocking her tote to the floor. Papers spilled, and the tech bro kicked them, shouting, "Clean that up, janitor." The live stream comments exploded. "She's nothing! Drag her!" Isabel knelt briefly to gather her things, her movements deliberate, her eyes calm, but the crowd's savagery was a living thing, feeding on her silence. As the guards marched her across the lobby, Marissa called out, "Come back when you've got a real bank account." The young woman's Instagram post hit 1,000 likes, her live stream now live, caption flashing, "Broke girl tries to scam Regent Crest, epic fail." Comments exploded, "Humiliating. She's nobody." A client tossed a crumpled receipt shouting, "Take that to the poorhouse." The mob's cruelty swelled, feeding on Isabel's silence. She walked on, her tote clutched close, her face composed as if the insults were nothing new. Vince leaned in, his voice low. "Sorry, ma'am, just doing our job." Isabel nodded, her eyes meeting his briefly. "I understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Bradley stepped in front of the guards, his voice carrying across the lobby as he raised a hand to stop Isabel's exit. "Hold on," he said, his eyes glinting with malice. "We need to check her bag. For all we know, she's stealing client data or slipping something in." The crowd gasped, phones swiveling to capture the accusation. "I've seen her type before," Bradley continued, his tone authoritative. "They come in, act innocent, then walk out with sensitive information." He snatched Isabel's tote from her arms, dumping its contents on the counter, a wallet, a pen, a folded withdrawal slip. "Look at this junk," he scoffed, holding up the slip for the crowd to see. $500? You're a thief, not a client." Clients shouted, "Search her! She's dangerous!" Vince hesitated, but Bradley waved him on, and the second guard patted Isabel down in front of everyone, her blouse wrinkling further under their hands. The live stream comments surged. "Criminal! Lock her up!" Isabel stood unmoving, her eyes steady, but the false accusation stung like a public execution. The revolving doors loomed ahead, promising exile. The live stream hit 5,000 viewers, the young woman's voice gleeful. "This is Isabel Nobody thinking she could play with the big leagues," she mocked, zooming in on Isabel's scuffed shoes. As Isabel neared the doors, Marissa jumped onto the teller counter, her blazer unbuttoned, her phone now live streaming to her personal account. "Everyone, this is what happens when you think you can fake it at Regent Crest," she shouted, zooming in on Isabel's back. "Isabel Moore, ladies and gentlemen, the queen of delusions. Thought she could fool us with her thrift store look and $500 dreams." The crowd cheered, their laughter a tidal wave, as Marissa panned to Isabel's scuffed shoes. "Bet she's got a cardboard box waiting outside." A client threw a pen, hitting Isabel's leg, and Marissa cackled. "Keep going, folks. She deserves it." The live stream hit 15,000 viewers, comments flooding. Pathetic. Make her cry, Marissa leaned forward, her voice venomous. Don't ever come back, Isabel. You're not our kind. Isabel's steps didn't falter. Her tote clutched tight, but the global ridicule burned. A wound carved by Marissa's cruelty. Bet she's sleeping on the street tonight. Comments roared. Disgrace. Ban her, a client yelled. Make her trend for failure. The internet devoured her shame, memes already circulating. Isabel moved forward, serene, but the ridicule burned, a wound no one could see. Then the doors spun open. A convoy of black SUVs screeched to a halt outside, their tinted windows reflecting the morning sun. The crowd froze, phones still raised, laughter choking in throats. Leonard Voss stepped out of the lead vehicle, his presence like a thunderclap. At 45, he was a study in quiet power, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp blue eyes and salt and pepper hair. His charcoal suit was tailored to perfection, but it was his aura, calm, unyielding, that silenced the room. The world knew him as the founder of Voss Core Capital, a financial empire with $5.1 billion in holdings at Regent Crest alone. He was a ghost in the public eye, his name whispered in boardrooms, his face rarely seen. The lobby went silent, the hum of wealth replaced by a stunned hush. Leonard strode through the doors, his steps deliberate, ignoring the gasps. A client whispered, "That's Leonard Voss?" Another hissed, "He never shows up anywhere." Marissa's face paled, her nails frozen mid-tap. Bradley's tie pin seemed to choke him, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Leonard didn't look at them. He walked straight to Isabel, who stood just inside the doors, her tote still in her arms. His eyes softened as he reached her, his hand brushing her shoulder. "You okay, Belle?" he asked, his voice low, meant only for her. She nodded, her smile small but warm. "Always, Len." He turned to the crowd, his hand still on her shoulder, and raised his voice, each word a blade. "I'd like to withdraw $5.1 billion in cash," he said, his tone calm but ironclad. "Right now." The room froze. Marissa's screen flickered, her hands trembling. Bradley's knees buckled, his face gray. The client's phones lowered, their bravado gone. A woman dropped her espresso, the cup shattering on the marble. The live stream surged to 10,000 viewers, comments exploding. "What? He's with her?" The young woman's phone shook, her caption changing. "Billionaire just walked in?" Leonard's gaze swept the lobby, pinning Marissa, Bradley, Vince. "And while you're at it," he said, his voice hardening, "I want every account tied to Voss Core Capital closed. Personal, corporate, trust funds, all of it. Effective immediately." He paused, letting the words sink in. "The woman you just humiliated? That's Isabel Moore, my wife." A collective gasp ripped through the crowd. Marissa's jaw dropped, her blazer suddenly too tight. Bradley clutched the counter, his tie pin glinting uselessly. The woman in the fur coat choked on her breath, her diamonds garish now. The live stream hit 20,000 viewers, comments screaming, "She's his wife?" "They're done." Isabel stood beside Leonard, her silence louder than any speech. She didn't need to defend herself, her grace did that. Bradley stammered, his voice cracking. "Mr. Voss, sir, there's been a misunderstanding." Leonard cut him off, his eyes like steel. "You mocked my wife for withdrawing $500. You called her a nobody, tried to throw her out of her own bank." He nodded to Isabel. "Show them, Belle." Isabel stepped forward, her brown eyes calm but burning with quiet fire. She pulled a single card from her tote, a matte black card with no name, only a crest. She handed it to Marissa, who fumbled it, her hands shaking as she swiped it through the reader. The screen flashed, numbers scrolling faster than she could process. Marissa's gasp was audible, her voice barely a whisper. 500 million? In her personal account alone? The crowd's shock was palpable, whispers rippling. "She's got more than all of us," the man in the cashmere coat muttered, his face ashen. Isabel stepped to the center of the lobby, her wrinkled blouse a stark contrast to the chaos around her. She faced Marissa, her voice soft but cutting through the panic like a blade. "You mocked me for $500, she said, her brown eyes blazing. "But let's try this. I want every penny of my accounts, $500 million, plus the trusts, the investments, all of it, transferred out now." The crowd gasped, clients clutching their phones as Marissa's screen flashed with Isabel's portfolio. Billions in assets, stocks, real estate. "That's Impossible, Marissa stammered, her blazer wilting. Isabel's smile was faint, but fierce. You made it personal, she said. Now I'm making it permanent. Clara projected the transfers on the lobby screen, billions vanishing from Regent Crest's books. The clients' faces paled, their wealth tied to the bank's collapse. The live stream comments shifted. She's a queen. They're screwed. Isabel signed the final form, her signature a guillotine, as Marissa sank to her knees, her career obliterated by the woman she'd called a nobody. Isabel's voice was soft but clear. If you won't process $500 because it's too small, she said, then I'd like to withdraw $500 million immediately. The lobby went deathly quiet, the only sound Marissa's ragged breathing. Bradley's knees gave out and he leaned against the counter muttering, We can't. Not that much liquidity. Leonard's lips curved faintly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then you'll find a way, he said. Or Regent Crest loses every penny of Voscor's holdings. Your choice. He nodded to a woman in a sleek gray suit who'd followed him in, Clara, his chief of staff, her tablet already glowing with data. Clara, start the transfers. Move everything to our offshore accounts. Now. Clara's fingers flew, her face a mask of focus. The crowd held its breath as bank executives poured into the lobby, their faces pale. The branch director, a silver-haired man named Edward, rushed forward, his tie askew. Mr. Voss, please, he begged, his voice trembling. We can resolve this. There's no need to... Leonard raised a hand, silencing him. You had your chance, he said. You chose to humiliate my wife. Now you deal with the consequences. Edward turned to Isabel, his eyes desperate. Mrs. Moore, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. Isabel's gaze was steady, her voice gentle but unyielding. You didn't need to know who I was, she said. You should have treated me like a person. Bradley lunged toward Isabel, his slicked-back hair unraveling, his voice shrill with desperation. Mrs. Moore, please, he begged, falling to his knees in front of the crowd. I didn't know. I thought you were... We all did. His tie pin clattered to the floor, his hands shaking. Don't do this. You'll ruin us all. Isabel looked down at him, her eyes calm but unyielding. You ruined yourself, she said softly, when you judged me before knowing me. Leonard stepped forward, his voice cold. You're done, Bradley. Clara, make sure his name's flagged. Every bank, every boardroom. He's unemployable. Clara nodded, her tablet flashing as she sent the order. The crowd gasped, clients turning away from Bradley's crumpled form. The live stream captured his humiliation, comments roaring, Justice! He deserves it, Bradley sobbed, his career ashes, as the woman in the fur coat whispered, He brought this on himself. Isabel's silence was her power, her dignity a crown. The words landed like a verdict, and Edward's shoulders slumped, his empire crumbling under her quiet power. Marissa's screen beeped, a red alert flashing. The transfers are starting, she stammered, her voice breaking. Billions. It's all moving. The clients gasped, their wealth tied to Regent Crest's stability. The man in the pinstripe suit clutched his briefcase, muttering, This'll tank the stock. The young woman's live stream hit 50,000 viewers, her phone shaking as she whispered, They're shutting down the bank. Leonard turned to Isabel, his anger fading into something tender. You didn't have to come here, he said, his voice for her alone. She smiled, touching his arm. I wanted to. For us. She stepped to a nearby desk where Clara had set up a tablet. Isabel signed the withdrawal forms, her signature steady, her wrinkled blouse a stark contrast to the billions at her command. The executives watched, helpless, as the transfers completed, one account after another, draining Regent Crest's lifeblood. The lobby was chaos now, clients shouting, executives scrambling, phones ringing off the hook. Edward's voice cracked as he pleaded, We'll lose everything. The regulators... Leonard cut him off, his voice cold. You lost everything the moment you disrespected my wife. He nodded to Clara, who projected a screen above the counter. Voscor's holdings, $5.1 billion, vanishing in real time. The crowd's gasps turned to murmurs of panic, the live stream comments roaring, They're untouchable! Regent Crest is done! Isabel finished signing, her tote back in her arms. She looked at Leonard, her smile soft but fierce. Let's go, she said. Marissa's chair tipped as she scrambled to her feet, her blazer torn, her voice a shriek. "You can't do this!" she screamed at Isabel, pointing a trembling finger. "You're nobody! You tricked us!" The crowd turned on her, their earlier laughter replaced by disgust. The man in the pinstripe suit shouted, "You mocked her, and now we're all paying." The woman in the Chanel suit, her phone still filming, yelled, "You're the fraud, Marissa!" Clara stepped forward, her voice clear. "Marissa Klein, terminated for misconduct. Federal investigators are on their way." Guards grabbed Marissa's arms, dragging her toward the staff exit as she wailed, "I was just doing my job!" The live stream hit 100,000 viewers, comments flooding. "She's finished." "Isabel's a legend." Clients began pulling their accounts, their shouts echoing as Regent Crest's collapse accelerated. Isabel watched, her tote in her arms, her silence a testament to her strength, as Marissa's world burned. He took her hand and they walked toward the doors, her loafers clicking on the marble, his suit a shadow beside her. The crowd parted, their earlier scorn replaced by awe. Marissa collapsed into a chair, her blazer crumpled, her career in ruins. Bradley's tie pin fell, clattering on the floor as he muttered, "We're finished." The young woman's phone dropped, her live stream cutting off as the reality sank in. Outside, the SUVs waited, their engines purring. Isabel and Leonard stepped into the lead vehicle, the doors closing with a soft thud. The convoy pulled away, leaving Regent Crest in chaos. Within hours, the news broke. Regent Crest's stock plummeted 40%. Federal investigators swarmed the branch, and Marissa, Bradley, and Edward were suspended pending review. The internet exploded. Hashtags Nathart Isabel Moore and hashtag Bank Meltdown trending globally. Clips of Marissa's mockery, Bradley's arrogance, and Isabel's quiet triumph went viral, racking up 30 million views. The woman they'd called a nobody had brought an empire to its knees. Isabel didn't watch the fallout. She was in their quiet upstate home, her blouse swapped for a sweater, cooking dinner as Leonard set the table. They laughed softly, their hands brushing, their bond unbreakable. She'd walked into judgment and walked out stronger, not because she'd fought, but because she'd stayed true. The world would remember this day, not for the billions or the scandal, but for the woman who'd faced a crowd and shown them what power really meant. Isabel Moore didn't need their respect. She was enough. This isn't just a story. It's a wake-up call. Don't let it pass you by. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to keep this fire alive.